You're standing at a fork in the road. Two paths stretch out before you. One promises love, messy, complicated, but undeniably beautiful. The other, self-preservation, protecting yourself but leaving something behind. What do you do when the person you care about the most is the one dragging you down? Hey there, friends. It's Steve, your second or maybe your third favorite grandfather. Thanks for tuning in to Old Guy Insights, where we tackle life's trickiest trials and toughest truths with honesty, heart, and hopefully a little bit of levity. I don't think there's going to be much in today's episode. But before we dive in, let me share a quick heads up. I'll never ask you for personal information. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'll never slide into your DMs or try to contact you directly. Everything I talk about is completely free without obligation and easy to grab on my website. If you're interested, it's there. I'm just here to share stories and offer a little help and hopefully brighten your day. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to have you here. And if it's your first time tuning in, don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. It's a simple way to join the family and keep the good vibes and help coming. Today, we're diving into unhealthy and toxic relationships. Those connections that weigh us down, leaving us feel stuck and sometimes just break us. Some relationships are unhealthy and others are just outright toxic. The distinction doesn't always matter. If it's hurting you, it's worth addressing. But here's the hard truth. Sometimes you have to break things off. Today, we're going to talk about when you need to make the call, why it's necessary, and how to navigate the guilt and the grief that can come with it. And before we start, don't forget to grab the free show guide for this episode. It's packed with tips, signs to watch for, and insights to help you navigate these tricky situations. Stick around until the end and I'll tell you how to download it for free. It's right there for you. Now, let's get into it. Let me introduce you to Emily. Emily's the kind of woman everyone describes as generous to a fault. She's got a big heart and a habit of falling for men who, on the surface, seem like they really care about her. But here's the thing about Emily and her relationships. They always follow the same pattern. At first, the guy's charming, showering her with compliments and promises. But before long, the cracks start to show. He forgets his wallet at dinner. He asks to borrow money for an emergency. He moves in, promising to split the bills, but somehow Emily ends up covering everything. I think we've all seen people like this. It got so bad that Emily even paid for her boyfriend and a couple he knew to join them on vacation. That's right. She not only covered her boyfriend's expenses, but also footed the bill for his friends to tag along. Plane tickets, hotels, meals, the whole trip was on Emily. Why? Maybe she was trying to repair the bad boy. Maybe she just loved the attention he was showering her with and thought this grand gesture would keep it coming. But let's be real. This wasn't love. This was exploitation, plain and simple. And when the money ran out, so did the guy. But before we go any further, let me make something clear. This isn't just a one-sided issue. Over the years, I've seen hundreds of cases where this dynamic worked the other way as well. Let me tell you about David. David was a really nice guy I met as a client. He was someone who had what looked like the perfect wife. She was involved in all the clubs, had her circle of friends, and he showered her with whatever she wanted. He ran into money trouble, and that's how I got to know him. When things got tight, their relationship started to run off the rails. She didn't want to cut back or make changes to their lifestyle. One day she looked him in the eye and said, "If you can't give me what I want, I'm out of here." He couldn't. She did. She left him broke, alone, and filing for bankruptcy. Both Emily's and David's story show us that unhealthy relationships come in many forms, whether it's someone taking advantage of your kindness or treating you like an ATM. The result is the same: heartbreak, financial damage, and a lot of healing to do. And let me tell you, it's not just romantic relationships. Over the years, I've had to deal with these dynamics in all kinds of situations. With friends, a business partner, even people I considered family. Unhealthy doesn't have to mean abuse. Sometimes it's just about imbalance, where one person is always giving while the other is always taking. You feel drained, unappreciated, and taken advantage of. It's not always intentional, but that doesn't make it any less harmful. And here's the thing, those imbalances, they have consequences. They can wear you down emotionally, financially, and even physically over time. They can just make you sick. Emily's story could have ended there, but it doesn't have to. And neither does David's, or anyone else's for that matter. I've seen people in these positions turn things around by recognizing the patterns, setting boundaries, and choosing themselves for once. It's not easy, but it's possible. And that's what I want you to take away from these stories. It's never too late to choose better for yourself. Unhealthy relationships aren't just limited to romantic connections. They can show up in friendships, family ties, or even professional partnerships. At their core, unhealthy relationships create an imbalance. One person's always giving while the other's always taking. They leave you feeling drained, unappreciated, and even resentful. Some unhealthy relationships cross the line into toxic territory, where manipulation, control, or exploitation takes center stage. But whether it's unhealthy or toxic, doesn't matter. The impact is the same. These relationships take more from you than they ever give back. Here's how it starts. At first, it might be subtle. A friend who never offers to pick up the check but always expects you to. A family member who guilt trips you into doing things their way, time after time. A partner who dismisses your concerns or makes you question your own feelings. It's easy to brush these moments aside, but over time, they can pile up, and the relationship becomes more about what they can get from you than what they can share together. And then there's that gut feeling, that little whisper inside you saying, "This isn't right." I've seen it time and time again in my work, and let me tell you, that whisper is rarely wrong. People always say they knew deep down that something was off. They felt it in their gut. They ignored it, hoping things would get better. Your inner voice knows before your head does when something isn't right. That whisper, it's there to protect you. But if you keep ignoring it, it turns into a scream. And by the time it's screaming, the relationship is often so out of balance that it feels impossible to fix. Unhealthy relationships thrive on patterns of imbalance. You find yourself constantly giving your time, your energy, your money. And while the other person takes, it just keeps on going. Or maybe it's a cycle of highs and lows. One day, they're showering you with kindness, and the next, they're tearing you down or making you feel small. Sometimes the line between unhealthy and toxic is just really blurry. It doesn't always matter where the relationship falls on that spectrum. What matters is how it affects you. If a relationship is leaving you drained, anxious, or questioning your worth, it's worth taking a closer look. And here's something I want you to remember. Unhealthy relationships don't have to involve outright abuse to cause harm. Imbalance alone can erode your well-being over time. Whether it's a romantic partner, a friend, or a family member, the dynamics of the relationship can take a serious toll on your emotional, financial, and even physical health. So, take a moment right now. Think about the relationships in your life. Are there any that leave you feeling more drained than fulfilled? Relationships that leave you questioning yourself more than lifting you up? Those are the ones we need to talk about. And in the next section, we'll dive into one of the hardest truths about those connections. Why you can't save everyone. Here's one of the hardest truths about unhealthy, toxic relationships. You can't save someone who doesn't want to change. And you know what? That truth doesn't just apply to romantic partners. It also applies to friends, family, coworkers, and anyone else in your life who keeps taking without giving. I want to tell you a very, very personal story. I want to tell you about my adopted sister. Watching her struggles and how they affected my family taught me some of the most painful lessons of my life. She had experienced terrible trauma before she was adopted, trauma that my parents didn't know about until years later. Understanding that doesn't excuse everything that happened, but it does help to explain a lot. My parents tried everything they could to help her. They poured their hearts, their time, and their energy into the relationship. But the harder they tried, the worse it got. The arguments, the tension. It was just a cycle that nearly broke everyone involved. Years later, I tried to help my sister myself. We were 7 years apart. I wanted to support her, to be there for her, and I was behind the scenes. I did a lot of things for her to help her, and it cost me time and money. She didn't know I was doing this, but I wanted to see if she took the help, stepped up, and made the necessary changes without thinking another handout was waiting. Because I knew with her, the last time was never the last time. But she didn't step up. She only wanted help on her terms. Terms that boil down to give me money or don't bother. I remember one conversation that broke my heart. Her voice was cold, almost businesslike. Just give me the money, she said, or don't contact me anymore. I sat there holding the phone, stunned. I loved her. I wanted to help her. But I realized she wasn't looking for healing or support. She wanted control. And that's when I had to ask myself, is this saving her or is it destroying me? This is what makes unhealthy relationships so hard to navigate. They're not always about bad people. They're often just about bad dynamics. Sometimes the other person is stuck in a pattern they can't break, and no matter how much you want to help, you can't fix it for them. Other times, it's two people trapped in a cycle where one is always giving and the other is always taking. But here's the thing. Even if you love them, you can't carry their weight forever. No amount of love, effort, or sacrifice will fix the relationship if the other person isn't willing to meet you halfway. That's where boundaries come in. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back. Not because you don't care, but because you do. Walking away or setting firm limits might be the wake-up call they need, or it might not. But either way, it's what you need to protect yourself. I've had to say goodbye to people I deeply cared about, people I loved, because staying in those relationships was destroying me. It's a painful decision. It never feels good in the moment. But looking back, I know I made the right call every single time. The hardest truth is this: you can't save someone who doesn't want to change, and staying in a relationship that's draining you doesn't help either of you. It just pulls you both down. In the next section, we're going to tackle the big question. How do you decide when it's time to let go, and what does letting go even look like? So what do? Do you stay and try to make it work, or do you walk away and protect yourself? It's one of the toughest decisions you'll ever make, and there's absolutely no simple answer. This question doesn't just apply to romantic relationships, whether it's a friend who always leans on you but disappears when you need them, a family member who constantly takes advantage of your generosity, or even a business partner who doesn't pull their weight. The decision is the same. Do you keep giving, or do you step back and set boundaries? Let me be real with you. Staying is only an option if both people are willing to work at it. If you're constantly the one putting in the effort while the other person doesn't change, all you're doing is wearing yourself down. Relationships, even healthy ones, require effort from both sides, but unhealthy relationships, they thrive on one-sided effort, and they keep taking as long as you keep giving. If you're going to stay, here's what I've learned. You've got to set boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls, they're survival tools. They let the other person know what you will and won't accept, while protecting your peace. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you're giving up on them. It means you're giving them a chance to meet you somewhere, hopefully halfway. But, and this is a big one, if the other person isn't willing to meet you halfway, then it's time to think about walking away. And let me tell you, walking away doesn't mean you don't love them or that you didn't try your best. It means you're choosing yourself, your health, and your future over a relationship that's killing you or hurting you. Here's the hard part. Leaving isn't easy. Even when you know it's the right thing to do, you'll feel guilty. You'll wonder if you did enough. And if you're like me, you'll second guess your decision for a long time. But guilt isn't proof that you're wrong. It's proof that you care. I have been there. I've had to say goodbye to people I deeply loved because staying was destroying me. And let me tell you, it hurt. It still hurts. But looking back, I know I made the right call every single time. Choosing to leave is about survival. It's about recognizing that you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, and that staying too long serves no one. Not them, not you, not the people who care about you, nobody. So ask yourself, is this relationship worth fighting for? Are they willing to do the work, or is it all on you? And if you already know the answer, maybe it's time to choose yourself. All right, so let's say you've made your decision, whether it's to stay and try to rebuild or walk away and protect yourself. What comes next? How do you actually start moving forward? If you've decided to stay, the first thing you need to do is rebuild on a new foundation. That means setting boundaries, real ones, and having honest conversations about what needs to change. Boundaries aren't just about saying no. They're about creating space for a healthier relationship. It's about saying, this is what I need to feel respected, valued, and safe. But don't do this alone. Get help, whether it's couples therapy, individual counseling, or even a trusted mentor or support group, or someone. Having someone to guide you through this process can make all the difference. Rebuilding isn't easy, but it is possible if both people are committed to the work. Now, if you've decided to leave, the first thing I want you to say is this: be kind to yourself. Leaving is hard. Even when you know it's the right thing to do, it still hurts. You might feel relief, but you might also feel grief, guilt, and maybe even doubt. That's normal. Give yourself some time to heal. And here's something important. Reflect on what happened, but don't dwell on it. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There's no sense wasting a perfectly good mistake. Learn from the pain. Ask yourself, what did I miss? Were there red flags I ignored? How can I handle this better moving forward? Reflection isn't about blaming others, it's about gaining insight so you don't end up in the same situation again. Another key piece of this is reclaiming yourself. Unhealthy relationships have a way of making you lose sight of who you are. Maybe you gave up a hobby you loved, put your dreams on hold, or started seeing yourself through someone else's critical eyes. Now's the time to reconnect with you. What brings you joy? What makes you feel alive? Start small if you have to, but please, start. And let's not forget the importance of a support system. Lean on people who love you. Friends, family, maybe you can get a therapist. They're the ones who will remind you of your worth when you're struggling to see it yourself. Finally, trust your gut. If nothing else, I hope this conversation has reminded you of the power of your own intuition. Your inner voice is there for a reason. It knew long before you did that something wasn't right, and it'll guide you towards what's next. Learn to trust it. Moving forward isn't about getting everything right. It's about progress, not perfection. Take it one step at a time and remember, you're not alone in this. In the next section, I'll leave you with some closing thoughts about finding peace and hope after making these tough decisions. But before that, let me just say, you're stronger than you think, and you've got what it takes to come out on the other side. Here's the truth, friends. There's no easy way out of an unhealthy or toxic relationship. Whether you choose to love them through it all or walk away, it's going to hurt. And it's going to challenge you in ways that you didn't think were possible. But at some point, you have to decide, do you want to survive or do you want to sink? And let me say this again, because I think it's important. Choosing to protect yourself doesn't mean you didn't love them or you didn't try your best. It just means you've recognized that their terms aren't healthy for you. It means you're choosing peace over pain, and that is okay. I want to be really honest with you here. Each person I've had to let go of in my life, whether it was a friend, a business partner, or even a family member, it hurts every single time. I still carry those losses with me. And here's the part I don't sugarcoat. Not one of those people ever came back and tried to repair the relationship. Not one apologized. Not one made the changes I had hoped for. Being right about the situation was always hollow. I would have much rather had a loving, equal, and healthy relationship with every one of those people. But here's what I learned. You can't force someone to meet you halfway. And you can't drown trying to save someone who refuses to swim. Sometimes you have to choose yourself. And does it hurt? Hell yeah. Will you feel guilty at times? Absolutely. But over time, you'll come to see that leaving wasn't about giving up on them. It was about giving yourself a chance to thrive. And here's something I want you to hold on to. The people who genuinely love and value you will rise to meet you. They'll respect your boundaries. They'll honor your needs. And they'll show up in ways that make you feel seen and appreciated. Those are the relationships worth nurturing. So as you think about the relationships in your life, ask yourself this. Are they building you up or breaking you down? Are they lifting you or leaning too hard on you? If you already know the answer, trust yourself. You have what it takes to make the right choice, even if it's the hard one. If today's conversation resonated with you, don't forget to grab the free show guide for this episode. It's packed with practical tips, exercises, and insights to help you navigate unhealthy relationships and take those next steps with clarity. It's the result of the research I did for this show. Just head over to oldguyinsights.me. That's me. And download it. It's on the show on the site. It's free and it's easy to grab. And if you liked what you heard today, please share this episode with someone who might need it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, join the family of listeners. Your support means the world to me, and it helps us keep these conversations going. Thanks for being here, friends. And remember, you're stronger than you think, and you've got this. Until next time, stay awesome, be strong, do good things. See ya.